Welcome to Toffee TV. It is the Daily Live. Be joined by Ped in a minute. He's stuck in traffic. But Dele, it's all about Dele today. It's the big story. Obviously, Everton have signed Ashley Young. We'll get into that in a bit as well. There's links to Anthony Elanga, but they've not really disappeared from January when Everton tried to get him. But the big story today is Dele and his interview with Gary Neville on a special edition of The Overlap. If you've not seen it, you should watch it. It's a difficult watch at times, I won't lie. Having worked in social care, working with people with addictions, what he's done today is incredibly brave. Being able to talk about some of the most difficult things that he's ever had in his life, ever will have in his life, is that was Ped, not the Flash, is an incredibly brave thing to do. To sit there and to open up those old wounds. I guess obviously he's just come out of rehab, so it's still quite fresh for him. Normally the guidelines would have been, let this settle a little bit, what you've just done, but he feels ready to speak today. I think Gary Neville has done an excellent job in being sensitive to everything that was going on. Obviously, when you watch the interview, you can see how upset Gary Neville is. It'd be hard to sit with someone while they tell you that personal information and not to be upset over it. It's very difficult. Mental health is an incredibly difficult thing to talk about for a lot of people, particularly men. I'm not just saying there's only men who struggle with it, because there's lots of women who struggle with it as well in terms of speaking about it. But we know that there is a stigma around men. There will be stigma around professional footballers especially. It's seen as very macho if you start speaking about the fact that you're struggling with life in general. Then it's a weakness for a lot of people. But hopefully things are beginning to change in the world. That is, and in football in particular. I've had issues. I think we all have. Or a lot of us have had issues. I had issues that made me leave that career, because what you see is really difficult. But for him, who's in the public eye, for someone who is, in England international, played at the Premier League, all over the world, for him to come out and talk about this now, knowing that he'll get some sensationalist headlines from tabloids, because that's what they do. They're like vultures, aren't they? But hopefully a lot of people will take heart from it. Hopefully a lot of people will take confidence to open up about their mental health issues, because talking about it does help, even though you think when you're in it, it doesn't. And it's very difficult. You don't want to almost burden other people with that. That's certainly how I felt at times. You don't want to share that stuff with other people. A, because it makes you look weak. That's how you think in your head. B, you always want to give the impression you're okay. I think he said something that was really important in that interview. He reacts with it by laughing. That's his defense mechanism, to almost smirk and to laugh. And we see that a lot in people with mental health issues or people with addictions, of trying to say, no, I'm all right, and a little laugh comes as if they're not taking it seriously. And when you've looked at other stuff, you see that. Ped, obviously this is a huge story today, but hugely important, not just for football, not just for Dele and Everton, but just in general, that someone with a high profile has actually sat down, opened up about it.
Yeah, extremely brave. I think it's, listening to the whole interview, he's obviously done the right thing for him, but it's also sad that it sounded a little bit like he'd been pressured into it as well. By tabloids. I can only guess which one it'd be. Putting someone in a situation, and we've had this a lot. We've just literally in the last 4 or 5 days, the whole country's been in a whodunit saga over something that might turn out to be something which has got absolutely nothing to do with anybody else. It's difficult, because in a way this has got to do with other people, hasn't it? And because we're always talking about it and we all want to know, and everyone's been talking about the last couple of 2-3 years, the downfall of Dele. and why it's all gone wrong, and you know, little did we know that it was the factors were so incredibly difficult and challenging for him. So he's gone away. He's obviously had rehab. He's obviously got those things out. He's spoken about them. He's spoken about them in his own way. He's sat down with someone he's comfortable sitting down with. And he's come out, and now it's a case of him getting himself fit. Very encouraging what he said about the footballing side of things, that he's got the hunger back. Whatever happens to him, that's good that he's got that, because obviously we've sat here for the last 12 months thinking, well, it just sounds like this lad's going to just probably end up retiring. And I don't think that would have been the right thing by listening to what he'd said, because that would have been almost like admitting defeat. Whereas by listening to what he said, he's gone through it all. I imagine he'll always have those demons, but he'll be able to cope with them now. And if that means he gets enjoyment out of what he loves doing, then that's brilliant for him. And we'll see what the next steps are. You know, he's at Everton playing, and hopefully he gets on the pitch and he starts showing what he thinks he's capable of, which sounds like he thinks like he's capable of more.
I think it's massively important for this particular topic to be discussed, because when you've got someone as high profile as him, and he has been high profile, and people have questioned him, we've questioned him, fans have questioned him, of other clubs, Tottenham fans questioned him, who've seen him at his very best, because he was a superstar, wasn't he, in the making in the 2018 World Cup. And he did have a fall. And when you listen to him speak, and he says at 24, he was looking in the mirror, wondering if it was just best to retire because of everything that was going on. And then he obviously opening up about his life. I mean, he's had traumatic events in his life. No child should be without guidance. You know, he's 7-year-old with a key. He was just allowed to come in whenever. You know, he was a drug runner. He said he got shipped off to Africa, to some place he didn't know, to learn discipline and things like that. All hugely traumatic events for a young person without any support. And therefore, you do create defence mechanisms for yourself. His defence mechanism didn't feel like he could discuss things, despite, you know, he was obviously very complimentary about his adopted parents, if you like, and said what a fantastic, you know, family he's got now. But he still didn't feel like he could speak to them. And everywhere, up and down the country and all over the world, there'll be lots of people in the same thing who love and appreciate the people they've got in their life, but for whatever reason can't fully explain what's going on because it is incredibly difficult. It can be anything. It can be addiction, it can be shame and embarrassment, it can be something. Obviously he had a traumatic event at the age of 6. He was sexually abused at the age of 6, which is devastating, obviously very upsetting. It's hard to talk about as a child. Imagine having to go that way, you know, who do you speak to about that? It's just incredible. And therefore at some stage you do, and again I saw this a lot working in it, people just look for something that makes them numb, so that they can just get through the day. It's gambling, it's alcohol, it's drugs, it can be porn, it can be theft, it can be anything, just to get them to a different place. And yet we almost feel, the way society is, that footballers shouldn't have any of these worries, because we first saw this with Stan Collymore, and I'll be honest, when Stan Collymore first said this, at the time where I was, you were a bit like, I know mate, but you are getting paid a lot of money, so you do have to. But then I worked with it, and it opened my eyes immediately. I'll be honest, it changed my opinion immediately. And you do change how you have to deal with people, because you see that it's difficult for them to open. I was going into families, the curtains would be shut in the house. I think I've said this before, and I'd be like, open the curtains, open the windows, go out and, go. And they're like looking at me as if I'm saying, like, let's go for a 20-mile run, because it was that much of an effort for them. If you're in the spotlight and you've got the demands every day, and we do it as fans, we do treat them like the robots, because we just do. It's just part of it. It's a game to us, and it's more than a game. A lot of us invest so much in it, of like them. We put it on them. We live vicariously through footballers, don't we? They're us, that represent us. For them young lads, and for him in particular, who didn't have that safe environment growing up as, and there's loads of kids who are going through this as well, and it'll be from people who are trying the best. It just doesn't. It's difficult for them. For him to have all that, and I imagine there's lots of footballers who've got these same kind of stories that are going through it. I think it's hugely important that today he's opened up with it. And today it puts that spotlight on. Look, there might be other stuff going on when these people aren't performing to how we want them to perform. We've seen it recently we've seen people like Ariana Grande talk about it, weight issues because of that. We've seen, I remember, like Demi Lovato and things like that. We've seen the girl out of Little Mix who Jessie Nelson, who left them because people were constantly going on at the weight of how she looked. And we do almost, because these people are in a public eye, we do kind of treat them as though they're absolutely untouchable. Nothing bothers them. We see it, and we get stick and for saying things, and people keep it, and people who don't like it have a go. And people will say, well, I remember someone that I was having a conversation about this, and I was like, that comment was a bit unfair because of this. And someone said, well, you're there, you're in the public eye, but you know what I mean, in a very tiny microcosm, obviously, but you're there so people can say what they want to you. And I was like, no, but they can't, though, because it was just one thing. And no one's ever trained me, anyone, and no one certainly has trained people like Dele, who are everywhere. Like I said, other people who do these things, no one's ever give them, because I don't think you can prepare them for what they have to go through pressure-wise. And I know they're well paid, and I know there's lads and women who are out there who are grafting, working the bollocks off to just pay the mortgage, to put some food on the table for their kids. I'm not saying, woe is footballers, they're so difficult. I'm just saying, pressure-wise and for the
stuff he's talking about is nothing to do with him being a footballer, though. It's stuff to do with life, him being, when he was a kid. And there'll be loads of kids going through that right now who get thrown to the wolves, who will look for things like football as an escape. And then, so when they go into that, all that other stuff, it's supposed to disappear, but it's always going to be at the back of your mind. And if someone says something to you about it, or those things re-emerge because you've had tough times, or you've been released by your club or anything, those things don't go away. That's the thing. They just get hidden by other things, like you've just said. And we do have like a weird like shame culture in this country, and it might be in other countries as well, where it's like in terms of like alcohol and gambling and stuff, like, just to like give you an example, like you'll have heard this a million times, but when you see like a homeless person and they're begging or whatever, and someone will go, oh, don't give them any money, they'll just spend it on alcohol. And you're just like, so what? So what if they spend it on alcohol? If that gets them through the day, if that's their thing that gets them to like living on the street, like, then so what if
they're living on the street? Yeah,
they're living on the street. They don't have any nice things. They don't have anywhere to live. They don't have any safety. They don't know if they're going to get through the day. So if they go and buy a can of cider or something, so what? Big deal. When people, we're all very judgmental, of course we are. We all do it. Even like recently with the Ivan Toney thing, it's like, what are the reasons? Are we getting to the bottom of the reasons of why people are doing that? Rather than going, oh, look at what these people are doing. It's like all the time, it's building on top, isn't it? People who come to this country from other countries that are just trying to escape like war and stuff, and think they're going to have a better life, and yet they're chastised for that. It's like there's so much stuff going on. And then the flip side of that is obviously people saying, just talk, ask for help. don't worry about it. To me, right, I think that can be a problem at times as well. This idea that we just have to talk. Certainly men, right, and I've spoken about this before. Men don't talk, but it's not. But you can't force that if you've got all this deep trauma, because we are brought up in a way of like, not like tough it out or anything, but it is that like, be lads, smile through it. You're not gonna go, mate, this has happened to me, because the simple fact is the person you say that to doesn't know how to deal with it, so therefore they're gonna think it's a joke, and it's ridiculously hard for anyone to come out and say, just.
I think you do have to do it though. Because,
no, I think you do, but I also think there's this thing of like, just talk, when it's massively hard for people to take that shame and just say, I'm gonna tell you, because you, and that's what I'm saying. That's a societal thing of like we need to learn, or we need to have processes in place from the very start of kids in school being able to go in and feel like they can. And don't get me wrong, a lot of that's flawed, because we've heard all kinds of other things about kids in schools and all other things, or whichever what is your solace, whether it be church or whatever. We need to put practices in place where people do feel comfortable, like it's not abnormal. And I think that is becoming more common, because you see more and more, like, obviously kids being a lot more relaxed with whatever they are, whether they're gay or trans or whatever. So kids feel like they can be comfortable. Obviously the safe spaces are more likely to be there. So hopefully the next few generations. But I do still think it's really difficult for someone, certainly, like, and we've seen it in the last couple of days with Hugh Edwards. Like, I understand there's this side of things that the people are reporting on, but the other side of it is, who knows what that fella's been dealing with for years and years and years. And there's always stigma, isn't there? There's the charities, it's literally called Chasing the Stigma, because there's a stigma there of everything now. There's a stigma of like weakness. You've just mentioned it with Stan Collymore when he came out. The first thing he got told was by his manager, man up. Who do you think you are? You're nothing special. You earn all this money. Or having a few days off, are you? Where the man was clearly suffering, and other people have suffered. So we have to put practices in place where people can feel comfortable, can sit down and say, listen, what's going on? What's or they can go. So I don't think it's as simple as in the world. It'd be lovely if we could just have a conversation. If someone could just go to someone else and feel really comfortable. I don't know. I've got mates who I've been mates with for years and years and years. I don't know whether I'd be comfortable going to speak to them about things.
Yeah, everyone's got that. Listen, my cousin hung himself at 32 because he couldn't open up.
Yeah.
Everyone in the family, his mum had seen him. He was going home and stuff like. So people didn't know, his mates. Why didn't he speak? Why didn't he just say it? We'd have done this. We all said it. He could have phoned me. He could have phoned my brother. He could have phoned his brother. It's a bit more difficult thing. Of course it is. I understand that, but that's what I'm saying. If you can, the other thing as well, and this is again this kind of played into where mine started. Was with the job I was doing, was the services were getting cut. So the stress comes on me, and I'm going and having to sit with people, and I'm in school with children while they're telling me things that kids shouldn't be going through.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do I process it? What can I do?
Yeah.
And in the end, I was just drowning because there was no services. So it's walking.
There's no services for you.
You end up sitting there though, listening to someone, and then going, right, okay. How can I help you? But that's one side of it. That's like the bad side of it. The other side of it is if it for some people they can be helped and the family can support or friends can support, and I know offloading can. Right, okay, what can we do then? How can we do? But we've seen a thing.
But that's the other side of it.
Didn't you play?
Yeah. I was just going to say that's the other side of it though. People do talk, and they got nowhere. They get nowhere. People talk and they'll go and see somebody and they'll go, right, what's the next step? And there's no things in place in this country for that next step for normal people. Like you've just said it there. People come to you and speak, right? But who's helping you? Who's helping you deal with that? You've just had to sit and listen to people tell you all the terrible things, and you're looking at their lives and you're looking at what they have to go through. And who's there to help you Because then you go, right, I'm gonna have to take this up the ladder. I'm gonna have to take this to the next stage, and you feel like you're drowning in it because you're watching people who are at the bottom. And also, by the way, again, another thing about this country, people who are on benefits and stuff like that, we shame them. And yet there's people at the top who are destroying our country who get away with it. And we shame these people who are literally drowning in it. We've got a society that is basically created. So there's a blame culture to put all the blame on these people who are drowning, who don't know what to do, who don't know when the next wage packet's coming in or whatever. We live in this society, so they're drowning in it. They come to someone like you. You're like, how do I deal with it? Because I've got to deal with. I'm the caseworker, let's say, for 5-6 families, and they've all got problems. So you're drowning in it. So then you end up going off sick with mental health problems, and then someone points the finger at you, going, "What are you doing?" And because there's no service to deal with it, you go sick. There is nobody else to take your position. This is what we've built as a country. We've built a society that doesn't care for the next person. We've built a society that literally just points finger at people and going, "So what? So what? Get over it, man up." We have to try to turn this a little bit, and we have to. And again, people like Dele today speaking about it. I think it's huge. I think it's huge to put it out there. I hope people are supportive with them. I think Evertonians will be. I think Everton fans will get right behind them. I think Tottenham fans will be backing them. They love them. And hopefully he talks about in the video helping one person. I think he'll help a lot more people by speaking about it. Gary Neville's done a tremendously empathetic job sitting there and getting them to open up. But let's hope football gets behind this, because again, football is another horrible place. You know, you've got people who are gay, who feel like they can't come out. You've had like things like the Black Lives Matter where people are booing it. You've got a place where people clearly feel that they can't come and speak about the issues they've got. Aftercare is still a huge problem. No, it was a huge problem when people get released. I left, when I was released, it's a huge problem. 10 years ago, when my mate's nephew was released, playing for Manchester United, there was nothing, and he was a good player. He should have had a career, and he hasn't, because his head took over. I'm not good enough. It does. It affects you. It affected me at that time. It affects you. It's still affecting lads today. We've had a thing recently where lads have killed themselves. We've been released from football clubs. That aftercare has to get better. It's such a horrible, cutthroat, pressurised industry. When you watch things, and I loved it, the Crystal Palace Academy, I loved it, but I was shocked that kids are fighting for contracts at 9 years of age. It disgusted me. It disgusted me. I've got a 12-year-old. I'm not saying he's good enough to go and play for make it as a footballer. Who knows, whatever. He's certainly not good enough at the moment. I would never let him in to an academy right now, ever, for that thing of, I've got to fight these kids. I've got to get out and practice. But the other side of it, though, is, and we speak a lot about kids' footy, because you and Mike and got my mate Graham who comes in, and we speak about it a lot. I find it all ridiculous. Kids with the trackies with the initials on and all that. I see it on Facebook all the time. "Oh, my lad's just signed for so-and-so, and he's 9. I'm like, why are you heaping that on him? Why don't you just go leave him? Just leave him to play foot. No, don't get me wrong, you go and play, but it's like, what I mean is, don't build it up. Exactly. Just leave it and see what happens. So what? It's like these kids again. It's that pressure of so you've got now a year now of like a kid not actually enjoying footy, but just trying to survive. Like, it's a reality contest. It's a survive at a footy club. And I think, you know what the irony of it is, and the things like South of the River and all that showed this, that it's actually, for kids who aren't at academies and stuff, there's still a huge opportunity to get in. And they're getting in 17, 18, 19 when they can deal with it a little bit more. We've just seen Ezzy, who's brilliant, released 6 times. He was like, I kept getting rejected, and I kept getting rejected. And it's like, why there's that pressure? But imagine having that pressure just to swing it back to Dele, because I know we're swinging off away from that. But to put it back on him, he's had that. You know, MK Don's first team at 16. The pressure there to fight. But then, even, what I found really interesting was, like, when he said, number one, he said, like, obviously a tabloid that got hold of it. But then when he said about, like, where Mourinho said he was lazy, and so that does, if you've got something, like when we signed him, we were like, well, it's there. But as he said, well, the week later he turned around to me and said something different. But that's not on film because that's not the narrative. That's not the narrative they want to create. He was a big player at Spurs at the time, and they've created that. And losing Pochettino obviously was huge for him, because he obviously, and we seen the other day Pochettino come out and said I'll help him, and obviously he must have been obviously very aware of what was about to happen. But it is things like that as well, isn't it? It's changing the narrative on somebody, and that person has got no way of controlling that. And it's and that we sat there and said this yesterday. Funny enough, on a show we did yesterday at 5 o'clock. It's like, if you can humanize footballers, if you can make people fall in love with a footballer for whatever he does off the pitch, then that can be hugely important. So you get away from them being, a robot, just the thing that runs up and down the pitch. And we're all guilty of course. Listen, I can't sit here and say I'm not guilty of it. Of course I am. Of course I am. But sometimes you do need to know the backstory of these people. You need to know what makes them tick a little bit. Listen, not talking about the ins and outs of everything, but you need to know a little bit. So what drives them, what they've been suffering under. There's been so many stories. Foreign players, when they come over, it takes them time to settle. Language, you've got to factor in their partners mightn't be happy, or their kids mightn't be happy, or whatever. We've heard stories in the past where a player came over and his wife was really, really ill, and the club weren't really helping and stuff like. There's so many different things, isn't there? But just to go full circle, all we can hope is that this opens people's eyes a little bit to what he's been through. And rather than just saying, well, I hope everyone just is nicer to him, I hope it gives the strength to other footballers to come out and say, listen, this is what I'm dealing with. And actually, it's like, I remember I go back again. I remember when Paul Merson came out, and the first thing about it was like, shame, being caught being a cocaine addict, shame. And then it was like, he revealed why he'd done it. And it was like, suddenly it had gone from being the thing that gets built up of like drug abuse and all this kind of thing to, well, why did he do it? Why did he feel like
it's just a symptom?
Yeah, it's like, what exactly? He's a compulsive gambler and a compulsive drug taker at the time for what. And maybe the reasons maybe never really truly came out, but he came out, and it's got to be the same with, maybe we've all got to, when we hear these stories, just stop for 1 minute and go, what drove him to do that
Human
thing?
Beings,
what drove him to do that thing? Rather than pointing the finger and going, I hope he gets 12-month ban or whatever. It's just like, wonder what drove him to do that. And when people are talking about like the reasons, alcohol sponsors and gambling and all the reasons, these are the reasons why obviously people want those things away. But there's obviously deeper reasons all the time. Absolutely.
But wish him all the best, obviously. Love him to come back. He seemed in a really good place in that interview at times. He seemed like he's got the bit between his teeth. I think obviously Everton Football Club, we give them stick at times for being frustrating and not doing things, but he was full of praise and said, even if nothing happens, I'll always be grateful to them for what they've done, even if basically if Everton get rid of him. I think Sean Dyche will give him every chance. If he's in a better place now than he's been for 5 years, then that gives you an opportunity to play closer to your natural talent, which you don't get in a club's first team at 16. If you aren't a natural talent, you don't play in a team that's consistently in the Champions League and World Cups if you're not a natural talent. And I hope that he can continue this mindset, because it'll mean that he's dealt with something. And I hope that he does, from an even swinging this back round to being a little bit selfish, I hope that he comes back and is a excellent player for Everton, and we're all talking about giving him a new contract and I'm settling here. That's what I hope. Ultimately. But I hope he's happy. Ultimately. Everyone now understands the situation. So at the club they'll understand the situation.
And again, do all the clubs have people? Do they have psychologists? Do they have open door policies? You know, he said some nice things about Sean Dyche being able to go in and speak to him. You know, basically all this stuff had been put on him. Do all the clubs have you know, because there's so much out. You know, I've just been getting my hair cut there. That's why I was late. Thanks, Daz. And they were talking about.
I'm not gonna have a go.
No. That's why it was
good.
That's why it was Dan, and he was just wanting to chat. But there's a young lad. I've told you loads of times. He used to work in the Barbies place for Aki. Now he's got a back injury, but he's chasing a contract.
Right.
And I think what kind of so he's got a back injury, and if he gets over his back injury and proves he's fit, right? He's like 23, 24 maybe. He's got a back injury, and he's got to get back to get a contract. Like, how much pressure is that? It's a kid from Skem. And he's got all that, and like, that's just like one tiny example of like and you're like, oh, he's been coming in shop and he's been knackered because he's working so hard to get back and trying to get that contract. And you think that's for anybody. That's like, there's no certainty there. There's nothing. And we do take it all for granted. And I just hope, obviously, Everton and a lot of football clubs do understand the problems now, but the problem is out there. It's out there now. The situation's out there. Let's hope that now that it's out there, you can work within that frame. And there might be times where Dele Alli mightn't be fully. You know, you go in and you see him, and you might say hello, and for all I know, you mightn't look up, but people go, well, might have something on his head, man. Do you know what I mean? Little things like that, which a lot of the time they can be like, I seen you think, you
think he is?
You know, or if we see him out, if we see a player out and they don't respond or whatever, it's like they might have been having a bad day. You know, they might have signed 199 autographs, but the 200th one they didn't because they had to go. And someone goes, that no bad, wouldn't sign me autograph, and it's like, yeah, there might be a reason, mate. He might have to get somewhere.
We all have up and down days. I just hope that, hopefully people are just a little bit more nicer to each other, really, because he says it himself, innit? And there's never a truer word. We're always better together than on our own. And that's just, even as a football club, we saw that when the fans got together. Basically kept the club up the last 2 seasons. The fans, haven't they? Stronger together.
Yeah, of course.
And I think it's a huge thing that if you feel supportive, if you've got mates, if you can just be nicer to each other, you know, less abuse. I think the world would be much better if people could, you know, if you don't like something, ignore it. You know, if it's not directly like threatening you or your family, ignore it, because what difference does it make to you? I see a tweet I don't like, ignore it. Do I have to respond? Do I have to abuse people? Do I have to do that? No. Block it, ignore it. Same with anything, really. If people are putting things on social media, do you have to respond? And if you do, can you respond in a way that isn't abusive? Because you might throw a comment out that you think is just a comment. You get on with your day. That person might be low, and that comment sticks with them and ruins the next 3 days of their life because you've said something that you didn't really need to say, and you've said it and moved on with your life. Yeah. To you, it was just in the moment, whatever. You know, let's not always jump on stuff as if it's fact as well. There's a lot of untruths out there that people treat as fact. And we can all be better at this, can't we? All of us. But let's hope, anyway, let's move on. But let's hope that this paves the way for other footballers and other people who feel like they're drowning a little bit to go and seek help if they can. Because for someone like him, who's got lots of talent, and that talent isn't coming out because it can't come out because he's either so numb because he's taking sleeping tablets, like he was saying, just to get through a day. that's a terrifying place to be at, isn't it? You can't do your job because you can't function. It's all about function. Football at the top level is incredibly difficult. It's insanely difficult for people who are functioning probably at their best level. So for ones who aren't, imagine how difficult that's going to be. So hopefully he'll pave the way, and it'll help other people, and it'll help people in all walks of life, not just footballers, not just famous people, not just whatever. Hopefully it'll help people just, cope a little bit, or make people go, you know what, I am struggling, I do need to seek some help here, whether that be a family member, a friend, or whether it be a health professional. And the onus should be on this government, future governments, whatever, making our health service better, not stripping it down, and making these services readily available for people to go and speak to professionals who won't all have the answers, but sometimes just listening, just having someone to talk to and open up to might help. Might not help everybody, like Ped said before. It might not. People might not want to talk about it. It's certainly not going to get any easier if you don't speak to anyone about it, is it? Because you will need something then to suppress it. And the problem is, the more you suppress stuff, something goes like a pressure cooker. Something else goes. Either you get an illness, or something will happen, or it's the straw that broke the camel's back at times. There'll be something that's literally nothing, and you respond totally or disproportionately, and that creates a whole lot of other problems. So, well done, Dele. Well done, Gary Neville, in the overlap. Tremendous. Reach as many people as possible. Right, moving on. Just a few. Let's go through some of the comments. Craig says, "Hell of a watch, that overlap interview. Would be amazing if he come good for us." Well, yeah, that'd be brilliant, wouldn't it? Let's hope he does. The Blue says, "Good on the lad for opening up about his trauma. It's clear the lad had real issues on top of that. He's not athletic anymore." Yeah, but that's not about that. He can be totally and utterly athletic. If you've ever suffered from mental health issues, getting out of bed is difficult. Walking, driving, talking, concentrating on anything is difficult. The athleticism doesn't come into it for me. We'll see, won't we? Carno says Dele will come good. Joe Mack, let's get a banner made for him for the sport and friendly. Yeah, maybe there will be. There was, we've done it before. Peter says, I think we have to remember that players are human beings and they have struggles as well. Stephen Lee says we stand with Dele. Stuart says, just makes me more desperate for him to turn it around. And Ryan says, why do you think he spoke to the overlap and didn't do it through Everton? Because I think doing it through the overlap was more powerful. I think doing it through Everton, I don't know whether Everton would have asked him as that searching questions. And the other thing is, he trusts Gary Neville. He's worked with Gary Neville, who's been part of England. So you got it. If you're talking about personal stuff like that, you have to at least trust the person who you're speaking to start with. Sitting in a room with all due respect to the Everton interviewers, they don't know Dele really. Okay, they've seen him and stuff, and he'll know who they are, but they're not on that level with him, are they? So, maybe he'll do something moving forward if he's in a better place with Everton, maybe. But I think it's obvious why he spoke to Gary Neville. Yeah, personally. Because it's all the footballers are speaking to Gary Neville, aren't they? From different clubs, opening up to him. He's gone through a lot of. He's a footballer. He's gone through it all. He understands it. This is someone he will have been comfortable with. He's his coach. Yeah, I wouldn't. I wouldn't have gone to Everton and spoke to their media team about this, because I just think you're speaking to people who won't understand the pressures. I think Gary Neville sitting there will understands the pressures of being a footballer. So, and I think that's why a lot of people are going to using the overlap. That's why I get so many good interviews. Yeah. Dave Roberts says it brought tears to my eyes. Happy Chappy says what the lad has gone through is horrifying. How anyone could do that to a child is beyond me. It's more prevalent than you think, mate. Having worked in it, it's everywhere, right underneath underneath your nose, really. Mr. Jeffrey says, I'm so proud that Dele probably was never ready to tell his story, but the Kansas media were going to do it soon, so I'm really glad he got to tell it first. Absolutely. Liam says, Gary Neville's a good lad, dealt with it so well. He's been nothing but a positive influence in the game for recent years. Much respect.
Again, that's why, isn't it? Because he does things. He does things for the right reasons. In a way, he tries to explain from a footballer's point of view what's going on and stuff. And when we talk about media in this country, there's nothing positive about the media in this country. The tabloids, there's nothing positive about them at all. Obviously I for the life of me, I can't understand why anyone would read The Sun or go near any Murdoch media. It's why we don't do anything with TalkSport, because he owns it. It's simple as that.
Not for they constantly ask us,
but we won't do anything with them, because as far as I'm concerned, the day Murdoch shuffles off will be a great day, because the man is just scum.
But no morals.
The man is just scum. He's happy to see other people suffer for a few quid in his pocket, and we know that for a fact.
Wellness coach says, this is a reminder, so much goes on behind the scenes at any workplace. Some can be communicated, some can't. Men especially need to talk, but hopefully this will help break the stigma. Joshua Foran says, absolutely love you lads for covering this. We have a chance for the comeback story of a generation with him, and he deserves as much support as anyone else. Cato says, my dad is a gambling addict and my mum is an alcoholic. These things ruin families. Both are apart at the moment. I can sympathise with Dele in that aspect, but the abuse he suffered is disgusting. Peaceful Warrior says, respect to Dele, and having gone through similar things, I'm 54 and still battling, but I hope he gives us a good year. Then it looks like he wants to go back to Poch or Spurs. Does he? I think he just wants to play football and enjoy it.
Does it? I think the football side of the thing doesn't really matter at the moment. I think just him getting back to a level that he wants to be at is the most important thing at the moment. Yeah.
Dave Roberts says, I've just beat bowel and lung cancer. Fantastic, brilliant. David. Super. My coping mechanism was to laugh at it and not let it beat me, so I know where he's coming from. Brilliant. Tremendous that, Dave. Stay well, mate. Peter Roberts says, the bloke was abused at 6 years of age, hung off a bridge, sent to Africa, adopted. This lad just wants to find peace, and if he does this, his talent will get him back. Well said, mate. Mr. Jeffrey says, also, can we give Everton massive credit for their statement they put out? It sounds like we've been right behind them as a club, doing whatever. Yeah, absolutely, we did. Just loads of stuff. Mr. Jeffrey says, spot on, Baz, I understand mental health a lot better now. I've had friends where getting out of bed was the hardest thing imaginable. Imagine having to do it, and this is when people go, his athleticism's gone, or this is gone now, and all that. Imagine having to get out and go into an environment where you've got to be at your very best all the time to be able to compete at the top level. It simply doesn't happen. We'll see now, won't we? We'll see. But hopefully he's well in himself. That's the first thing. Royal Blue says, listening to Dele's story hits home hard. Jacob says, I work in the NHS, and the amount of men who go through depression and past trauma who are too scared to speak out because they feel like it's not a man thing is so upsetting to see and hear. Absolutely. Mathew says, great video, lads, and well said. Fantastic interview by him and Nev. Always rated him as a Spurs player. Everyone can totally understand what he's gone through in his life now. Absolutely. Yucky Ducky says, people just love to chat crap about people. I've had a drug problem all my life. Loads of people are going through the same crap as me. People don't give a toss. They need to, though, don't they? And it is difficult. It's difficult. Thanks for people who are saying sorry for the loss and all. It was 6, 7, 8 years ago now. It doesn't make it any easier. And it's frustrating. You'd always have that thing, and his mum and his siblings will always have that thing of, why didn't he open up? We have it. We all have it. But hopefully more people. Clark Carlisle's another one, wasn't he? Aaron Lennon was another. You know, we've had it before. It's so difficult. Just a few football things. Ashley Young has been confirmed. His interview was quite good. Doesn't look 38, so fair play to him. But it's the first one in.
Yeah,
a positive in that he's a squad player that's come in, and you know, like you said, he may well be in Everton's first team as a left back or whatever, or certainly there to put that pressure on Michalenko. But it's over the line, and it's you know, Everton move on to the next target now. He seems quite happy to be here.
Yeah.
And I think reading what a few of the Villa players have said and what a lot of their fans have said, seems like he's a positive influence.
Yeah.
Seems like he's someone who'll be good in the dressing room as well. So
yeah, I think as long as he's got the hunger and the desire and he's fit, then I think there'll be something to take from it, won't there? I think for me, there's a few positions on the pitch that he can play in, that he'll get game time. I genuinely do believe he'll be one of those players that ends up playing 25 games this season, maybe, you know, not always in the same position, but covering for other players. And, you know, can he play, you know, 3 times in a week? Well, I suppose you don't really want that to happen anyway. But I think he's a good squad player. To me, it makes sense. It's a 1-year deal. You know, he's 38. Yeah, so what? If he's fit and he can stay fit, then I think he's got something to give us. So we are where we are, and I think it does help us cover a few positions.
Definitely. Frank Rodgers says, thank you for talking about this over the usual shit show that's Everton. Watched the interview in the office. It was so emotional. I struggled to keep it together. Really hope he sorts himself out. Knuckles down. There's a player in there. Steve Kelly says, all right, lads, hope you both are well. Well put about Dele and the mental health issues. Most important thing for Dele is that he's happy in life. Forget the football side. One thing that stood out to me is when he mentioned about the Amazon doc with Josie saying sorry to him, but they didn't put it in the doc. I think the doc and Spurs have come out to dry. And the media made the media create a narrative about him. Yeah. Curly says, hey up lads, I'm completely behind giving Dele a go. You have to remember how much he'll cost us. If he plays well enough and he gets back to something like he can do, then Everton wouldn't be able to buy a player who would be even 70% of Dele for that price. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying he will, by the way, but if he was, imagine if he come back to 70% the player he was at top of his game and for Spurs. If Everton were looking for that kind of player now, we wouldn't be able to afford him. So he'll only get that chance if he's fit, and if the manager's convinced that he can do it. So then, if those two parameters are ticked, then why wouldn't we see if we can get games out of him and see what he can do? And if he comes in and affects games, we'll all want him to play. Because we all will say, well, you know, he's come in. If he does well, I don't have any issue. I don't have any issue with the price. I really don't. It's up because he will only tick the box. We will only have to pay anything when he's at the top of his level that he can be.
That's for the manager to decide, isn't it? That's for the manager once he's fully fit. He's training yesterday on his own in Switzerland, doing his own work. He had an operation, didn't he?
Good that he's out there.
Well, he's out there, and the most important thing of that is he's treated like everybody else in terms of the football side of thing, and the manager will have to decide whether he fits in, whether he needs that type of player, and then is it worth spending the money? You know, I understand everything that's been said today. What today has done is said, right, mentally you've got that player back. Prove it, and then make a decision. The manager might be looking at it thinking, I've got nowhere for this player, or the money I'm going to have to put into this player is money I could be spending somewhere else. Those cold, hard decisions still need to be made. So for me, that side of things, I don't think it's really changed. The only difference is the manager now knows he's got a player who is in a good place and there's a clarity, and maybe the things that were stopping him have been removed. So the manager still has to make a decision. You know, a fit and healthy Dele mightn't be what the manager wants. It might be what he needs, but he gets to make that decision now for the right reasons rather than the wrong reasons.
Absolutely. Like last few, Corin says mental health is hard. I've suffered with it for 13 years. I have very dark days. There's too much judgment in the world. I hope he gets better soon. Hope you're all right, Corin. And Mathew says, I think sometimes I should talk to someone. I don't really have any friends. One really, my dream is to go to Goodison, and I'm hoping to do it this season if I can get help down there. Get in touch with people. A lot of people have said it with Everton in the community, Mathew, and see if there's any groups or whatever that you can get there.
There
will be things out there, definitely.
You know, I've played in. There's things like I've played in like the Manwell Football League, which is it's currently in Prescott, and it's for men who are middle-aged. A lot of them overweight. And it's an opportunity to, number one, to play football against people who are like the same, so you don't feel like, because you got to, as we get, I know there'll be a lot of younger people, but as you get older, there's like barriers that get put in front of you, like, you know, if you still enjoy football and stuff like that, and you enjoy the camaraderie, but you don't want to go to to play football or five-a-side because you just feel like you're going to embarrass yourself because of all like the younger people who are there and stuff. So you can find like-minded things like that. You know, I know there's a couple of different ones like that where they're trying to look after your weight and the mental health side of things, and there'll be other things out there. I know, you know, as I said I played in a game on Saturday with the lads from Talking Toffees. I know there's a couple of Jay, isn't it? Has got the walking. I can't.
JD.
Yeah, JD, but I can't remember what they're called. So JD's got his like the walking group, and they just go for walks as a bunch of lads. And you know what? When people say talk, it's not like I have to pour all my heart out. It might just be going down and having a conversation with somebody. And then because you get to trust with that person, you might go, you know what, I haven't been feeling great recently. And they'll go, why, what's been the matter? You know what, I don't know, I just don't feel great. I'm struggling to get out of bed. And it's not like you have to pour your soul out of why that is. But I think the first steps have to be being in the company of other people, because we are supposed to be. We've become...
Talk Hub _ Is for JD.
We've become weird creatures that go on our phones and talk to strangers and then get abused by strangers and wonder why society is breaking down to the point where people just are like absolute knobheads to each other, where we're supposed to be like together in groups, aren't we? Families and stuff or whatever. And that sort of is drifting out of our lives. So it's that thing of just being able to see someone and going round to someone's house and having a cup. I'm really bad for it. I've got mates I don't see and they're only down the road, and you just think they'll go, come down, have a cup of tea, and you're like, oh, you know what, I've got to do this and I've got to do that. And sometimes it can be like, do you know what, I've got half an hour there, I'll just go and have a cup of tea with them, because most of the time you're like, they're made up to see you, you're made up to have a chat, you end up talking about stupid things that you don't talk to about anyone else because other people don't share the same stupid things you like. So there's so many little things we can all do together, rather than just going on Twitter or Facebook, or where it's all, I'm having the greatest time of my life, and then you feel bad because someone or the other end of the spectrum is I'm having a terrible time and it's all your fault and you're a knobhead kind of existence. So It can just be about going, you know what, once a week I'm going to go and have a cup of coffee with me mate for an hour, chat absolute wham to each other, and that's the end of it. Sometimes that's all it needs.
Yeah, absolutely. Anthony Elanga to finish Everton.
Anthony Elanga to finish Everton.
To finish off. Everton have been interested in him for a while as a loan. Not sure he wants to stay in England, to be honest. I think he's looking for a loan elsewhere, but again, it's all about offers, isn't it? Can Everton persuade him that
see what happens.
He is the place for him? We'll wait and see, but it's been put out, there's been a bid, there's been no bid for Anthony Elanga. at the moment. Whether if Everton get the right interest back, then maybe a bid will come. But at least he's the right the right age, and he's quick. He is quite quick. People will have an opinion on whether or not he's good enough or what else we should do. But let's wait and see. We're going to be live on More Than a Game. But hit the like button, subscribe on your way out. Thanks for everyone who's joined and commented today. Much appreciated. Take it easy. See you later.